The Miami Heat were a Cinderella story last season, making it all the way from the play-in tournament, even though they almost lost that last play-in tournament game, but kicked it in to a different gear against the Chicago Bulls. Taking from that to go all the way to the NBA Finals was something that we had never seen before, and maybe something we don't ever see again. But the Miami Heat, once again, we're kind of trained to start looking at the Miami Heat, or consider the Miami Heat always this team that could turn it on in the playoffs and go far. Led by, of course, Jimmy Butler, one of the better two-way players in the NBA and one of the best coaches in the NBA, Eric Spoelstra. And I don't think the Miami Heat are going to give the benefit of the doubt as they did last season. Now, the Miami Heat, who had a 5-game losing streak, were able to come out of that and have now won 2 games in a row, which is good for the Miami Heat. But there are tons of questions about, are the Miami Heat going to be able to be that same Cinderella story that they were at points last season, especially in last year's playoff run? I apologize, 4-game losing streak, not 5. Let me correct myself on that. But when you look at the Miami Heat, there are a couple of things specifically different from this team than last year's team that are going to be a sign for concern in the playoffs. For one, Max Strus. Losing Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, who, I get it, Gabe Vincent hasn't played a whole hell of a lot of games this year, but especially Max Strus, a player that can definitely take on a lot of the scoring load needed for the Miami Heat and definitely can step in as not only a shooter, but as scorer at times when inevitably Tyler Hero's going to miss some time, who Tyler Hero's out right now as well for the Miami Heat. Losing a player like Max Strus, I think, especially in the playoffs and especially while you're trying to go on a run, could definitely be detrimental to the Miami Heat from where they were last year. Now, the Miami Heat right now currently sit at the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference, so they would have to win at least one play-in game. Again, that's if they don't drop anymore, which is good why they're able to stop that 4-game losing streak they're on to win the next 2 games. But they still sit right now as 1.5 games behind the Indiana Pacers for that final 6th seed. And while the Pacers have dealt with their own injury concerns, and it's not outside the realm of possibility that the Miami Heat could absolutely get that 6th seed and avoid the play-in tournament altogether, there's some key things with this team, like I said, that definitely make it maybe not as hopeful. Right now, one could say that Jimmy Butler is learning to pace himself, but so far this season, Jimmy Butler has not been the same player defensively that he was, especially off dribble and drive, some in the pick and roll, things like that. Now, make no mistake about it, he's still a damn good two-way player, and we know that the heart that Jimmy Butler plays with, and there could be absolutely that chance you look at what the Miami Heat are and what Jimmy Butler is and say, hey, they're pacing themselves, going through the regular season, kind of going through those motions. They've also made several moves that they're still kind of figuring some things out. But Jimmy Butler does seem like a player that may be on a bit of a slide. Not a huge decline, but a bit on a slide. And his run was so important for what the Miami Heat were able to do last year in the playoffs that there's some doubt around his ability to do that again. But then outside of that, yeah, Jimmy Butler's great. Eric Spoelstra, we know what this cast is. But then you look at a player like Terry Rozier, who he brings a lot of what the Miami Heat need, right? I want to make no mistake about that. But when you're seeing him now in a team with structure, with the type of expectations, and there's some concern on, hey, is Terry Rozier one of those players that benefited from not being on a team that had a lot of expectations around it? Now, we've seen Terry Rozier be on good teams before, so, there's not a whole lot of questions for that, but still, you have some of that doubt around this team, and the health overall in the team right now is something that you got to worry about as well, with Jimmy Butler being listed on the injury report for the last couple of games. But day-to-day in that, Kevin Love's out, Tyler Hero's out for them, right? So right now, and you have to worry about those injury concerns for this team overall. But the Miami Heat, outside of just the personnel on the court, right? Let's look at it. They are one of the worst offensive teams in the game of basketball. Now, they're able to overcome that and still win more games, not by the nature and the brand of the defense that they play, but as you go forward in the playoffs, and if they do face off against another team that has a solid defense in that playoffs, it's going to be a tall order to just expect the Miami Heat to be able to just power their way through again. They are the 4th worst offense in the NBA, or the Miami Heat, only averaging 110 points per game exactly. Bottom 4 in the NBA, but then you look at the flip side of that. They're the 4th best defense in the NBA, only allowing 109 points per game. But that margin of error that the Miami Heat have there is not a lot. And so if you face off against a team that can get hot while also not being a slouch defensively at all, I just don't know if the Miami Heat are going to have that same firepower that they had prior that powered them to wins in the playoffs against teams that finished with better records than them. And so in no way am I saying that we should count the Miami Heat out, and the Miami Heat should not be looked at a team that can be a contender. As a matter of fact, if I had to look at play-in teams right now that could go the furthest in the playoffs, I'm absolutely going to be picking the Miami Heat. But you have to ask yourself, how much is that based off the reputation of what the Heat have been and not really taking into consideration who the Miami Heat are currently? And that is something that can only be told on the basketball court. Now, we know in the playoffs, lineups become a little bit more restrictive, right? Teams don't go as deep into their rotation. Coaching and the chess match that is coaching in the National Basketball Association becomes even more important on top of that. But it's just something about this Miami Heat team that it doesn't have that same feel as last year's team when you just felt like, hey, no matter where this team is seated, they still have a chance because they fight extremely hard. And there's limitations on this team all up and down the bench. Yeah, Duncan Robinson's coming on more as a shooter and definitely showing things. You got Haize, the rookie, who's just been overall really good this season, even though it seems like he may be hitting a bit of a rookie wall here, especially over that 4-game losing streak. He's averaging 11.5 points per game over the month of March, though. So overall, you got some things. Like I said, if I had to pick it, I'm still going to bet on this Miami Heat team to go far and take teams far in the Eastern Conference playoff race. But it just doesn't. If this team were to fizzle out and maybe get eliminated much earlier than what they did last season and maybe not even make it out the first round of the playoffs, I wouldn't be too hugely surprised by that, especially when you look at the competition in that Eastern Conference overall. But again, there's a lot of teams in there that have injury concerns, things like that, that it could really go a different route. As with every team in the playoffs, matchups become a hugely important part of that. But the Miami Heat, like I said, this year they sit at 37-30. Jimmy Butler seems like defensively, maybe he is saving something, and I pray that that's the case. Jimmy Butler is one of my favorite players in the NBA, be it because he used to be a Chicago Bull, but that's a story for another day. This Miami Heat team is coached well, it has talent on it, and they fight hard. And the defense, the brand of defense they play could very well be enough to push them into the far into the Eastern Conference playoff race. Make no mistake about it. But when you look at some of the teams above them, right, well above them, when you look at the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, even the New York Knicks, I would even say a young, scrappy Orlando Magic team, are you going to pick the Miami Heat over those teams? Some of those, yeah. Some, no. But here's what I'll say on that. I would have said the same thing last year, and look at what the Miami Heat made it to last season. So let me know your guys' thoughts down below. What do you think about the Miami Heat? Are you as confident in them be able to have an amazing run like they did last season? Doesn't necessarily have to finish in the NBA Finals or anything like that. But let me know what you guys think overall on the roster, the coaching, and where you have the Miami Heat ranked right now as potential dark horses in the NBA playoffs. Let me know all that down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. By the way, I don't think I said my name. My name is Haize, and I'll see you guys here. We'll be calling this Views from the Bleachers, so make sure you guys stay tuned in because we'll be dropping this content a lot during the week, man. Guys, thank you so much. Make sure you guys subscribe to Players Choice as well, y'all. Peace.